Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV. And on Pod TV, we bring you great news from around the world, talk about innovation, and what we can do together as a nation and world to build back stronger and better after this pandemic. We've had some technical difficulties today, but I'm with Mark Lee, and we'll have other guests join, and this will be a little bit of a shorter show. But today, my monologue is about the crisis in Israel. President Biden, during the campaign, called President Trump's policies to Israel destructive and short sighted. Yet only 4 months into his presidency, he has left many of President Trump's policies in place, and many of us confused and concerned about the United States policy towards Israel. Let's not forget that President Biden had criticized President Trump's administration when he was a former vice president and a candidate for the presidency, that this decision to move the embassy, Israeli embassy to Jerusalem, was short-sighted and frivolous. But here we are now with Israel attacking the Gaza Strip and 120 Palestinians dead, many children and private citizens dead from what they now are saying could escalate into a full-out war in the Middle East. How did we get here? Well, this all started when Jewish settlers evicted Palestinians from their homes, and many of this occurred on the holy night of Ramadan last week. This has opened up a Pandora's box of animosity and bitterness, but all in all, confusion about President Biden's policy towards Israel and his continued support of the hardline administration of Benjamin Netanyahu. But before I close out, I think there's a much more underlying concern here, and it's about the lack of credible, aggressive foreign policy, clearly defined foreign policy strategies from President Biden. The COVID pandemic has enabled this administration to be courageous and bold, taking the lead from even former presidents like President Obama. But once again, the Democrats are showing weakness in foreign policy. Iran, we said we were going to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal during the campaign. There's been no signal that that's going to happen. Talk on China has been tough, hearing words like coercive, but no word yet on eliminating the tariffs or what we're going to do with China. And I could go on, but Cuba is another example of not relaxing, of, what are we going to engage with Cuba? I could go on, but the fact of the matter is, I would encourage President Biden to be very, very consistent and communicate what his foreign policy strategy is. We might be building back better home as we vaccinate the American people and get herd immunity, and get our economy back on track. But we also have to build back stronger for the world to see the United States foreign policy. I would highly advise the president and the Democrats that they need to lead on this. Democrats historically have not been strong on foreign policy, and now they could be playing into the hands of Republicans during the midterms and the presidential election in 2024. With that, I'm now going to jump in with Mark Lee, Shaquille Latimer from Down Under, and Nick Paladiva. Well, gentlemen, welcome to a short show. And, thank you.
I'd like my fan club.
Thank you very much.
Good monologue, Steve.
Not bad.
Sounding like an independent now. I hope I'm not rubbing off on you.
No. Well, anyway, no. I mean, that was sort of off the cuff. We're going to start with Down Under, Shaquille Latimer, the fiery Shaquille Latimer.
I was actually impressed. There could be some libertarian in him. Yes, he did preface it with how courageous and bold the Democrats are.
Bold.
Which is fine. We don't mind a little bit of bias here and there. But he did actually offer some constructive criticism of the Democrats, which I think is great. And for the record, I'm not against the Democrats. I think the Democrats have a great platform. I think that the things that they stand for are mostly fantastic. And I think that the Republicans stand for some mostly fantastic things as well. I think it's a matter of finding that balance. But as somebody who dislikes government, whoever's in charge, I'm not going to like too much. And I think that's important that we hold people to account. I'm scared him away. He's left already. I'm scared him away.
I know you're being nice to me. He took off. He went.
I know.
He went to city. He went back to his government position.
Well, yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's what started my monologue. Is I just think we've been talking so much about foreign domestic policy, but I'm really, really concerned about the foreign policy. So, Shaquille, thanks for adding that. Mark Lee, what do you think about this whole Israel thing? I mean, we're on the brink of war right now.
We've been on the brink of war with that whole region forever. It's one of those regions like Ireland and others that has always seemed like they're the brink of war and all of that. Way back when I was a supporter and still am a supporter of, a Palestinian homeland and all of that. And I know some people may not be as much of a fan of that as I am and everything. And actually, I even thought, even though they might have gone a little too radical, that the PLO had some good ideas and things of that nature. And they kind of reminded me of ANC down there in South Africa, which actually got some freedom and everything, even though some people may be concerned about some of the injustices that even go on in that country as well. So, like I said, I still would like a Palestinian homeland of some sort. And I was actually kind of wondering about Shaquille down there in the down underland, because I'm wondering what he's thinking about the possibility, and we talked about it last week, of a third party, because apparently Liz Cheney is highly upset and she's thinking about breaking off and creating her own party that'll be like, there'll be the Trump party and then the Trump/Tea party, and then there'll be the Liz Cheney party. But I was watching Saturday Night Live, or actually I was watching it later, and they were saying that she hadn't really found that many people to kind of like jump on the bandwagon with her, because that was actually part of the running joke, was she was naming people and she couldn't really come up with a lot of names.
Nick, what are your thoughts? Well, we're going to talk about Liz Cheney in a minute. Nick, what's your thought about Israel?
Sorry, before we go to Nick, look, he's only one of the main guys on the show, so we can dismiss him for a minute. I just want to ask you, Mark, just on Palestine, are you suggesting that Palestine should have its own nation and have its own sovereignty?
Yes.
As is the rest of the world? Like everybody says, like most of the countries that are part of the United Nations says there should be a two-state solution.
Yes.
Even Israel says there should be a two-state solution. Who's on the other side of this argument?
I don't think anybody is.
I'm on the other side of the argument. I don't think there should be any states at all. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous in the 21st century that you have all these different states and countries running around. I mean, it's just insane.
There should be no countries, Nick.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's kind of an outdated medieval mode.
Look, Nick, we went through this before when I was here a few weeks ago. We know that you guys hate America because you're American.
Yes,
but
of course.
The rest of the countries out there actually have some pride. And you love other countries. You love them so much you want them to move to your country.
Yeah,
so
of course.
those countries have to exist.
No, we just want your best. Okay, we don't want the rest.
You don't want our best. You don't want our best.
We want. Well, I know. The thing is, we need to change our foreign policy, and the best and the brightest are welcome. Everybody else stay in your own country.
Yes,
okay?
but for you to attract the best, you have to attract the best from somewhere. Without
around the world,
America, and then you wouldn't be able to attract the best from anywhere.
Yeah.
So you need to have other countries. You need to have other places for you to see yourself to, and then
look. More countries create more government, right? So the thing is, you should be against more countries too. We should be on the same page. In Australia, you have one country and a huge landmass. Why don't we take Western Australia and make it Shaquille land? And why don't you succeed Western Australia from the rest of Australia? Because that creates more government, more problems.
Because I would rather convince people, make my arguments to convince people rather than using force and being a dictator. You see, that's a difference.
Okay, well, the thing is, we have different.
Shaquille, to come back to your earlier question, I just had a quick thought. Is come back to your earlier question. I would say that right now, Israel and the government of Israel is relatively moderate. It's a moderate government in the sense of everything. So yes, right now, the current government is definitely part of that two-state solution. But there are still some Zionists that live in Israel, including some that are in the Israeli state government and Israeli government in general. They're just not in control. So as long as they're not in control, then yes, the two-state solution is probably going to be supported by a lot of folks, including folks within Israel. But there are some folks within Israel even that are not the biggest proponents of that.
There are people in America who think that that NASA faked the moon landings.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is true.
they should have their own separate
That
country.
doesn't mean that that's the prevalent view of Americans, right?
Right, and I did not say that was the prevalent view of Israel.
The entire world believes that there should be a two-state solution. There isn't really anybody powerful on the other side of that argument except for countries like Iran.
Okay,
Yep.
but here's the problem that I saw yesterday, Steve, addressing the issue. There was a big building that held the press. Okay, Netanyahu decides to destroy the building, so he blows it up. Now, time out. He didn't have to do that. If the Israeli army is so strong, which it is, they could go in and occupy the building, kick everybody out, see if there's anything wrong or right inside the building, the alleges where they were hiding all these secret stuff, and be done with it. So my question to the panel, why did he have to blow up the building? Or is this just a show of force? In other words, I saw that to be...
I'm more concerned that Donald Trump, according to you guys, not according to what I think, but according to you guys, I'm more concerned that Donald Trump might be watching our show and might have heard that this is a strategy. All the press is in a building and they blew it up.
They didn't have to. See, here's the whole point.
This could be like really dangerous strategy.
But
They
the point
did not have to blow up the building, is what I'm saying. Why would you blow up a building? Yeah.
First of all, this is a hardline administration. Netanyahu was in close allies with President Trump. And the point of this show today, before we get into Liz
So
Cheney,
is that the reason he's the hardline administration? Because he was
I
an
don't
ally?
know. Well, no, look, Shaquille, I'm not an expert in Middle East. I mean, I did take a class at Emory when President Carter was affiliated with the university. There's a guy named Ken Stein who's a Middle East expert. He's a big professor.
So,
at Emory.
but you've made the statement that this is a hardline administration. Other than because he got along well with Trump, why is it a hardline administration?
No, I mean hard line in terms of, look, this Middle Eastern conflict, like Mark Lee says, has been going on for all of our lifetimes, right? You made a great point, Shaquille. The two-state solution is a solution that President Trump has said makes sense, Democrats have made sense, but we're never able to get there because there's so much animosity between, whether we recognize the Palestinian people with a separate state, whether we have Jerusalem as the head of the embassy. And what's driving a lot of this is East Jerusalem, which East Jerusalem, the Palestinians claim, is their capital of their alleged state, which they've been deprived of. So, but my point is that where does President Biden stand on this? Where does the United States of America stand as it relates to policies in Israel? Because as Israeli missiles are going in and attacking these buildings, people are saying, look, Shaquille, you should be happy with me. There might be a little libertarian in me, because he said that the decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem was frivolous and short-sighted, right? He's called the Trump's administration on Jerusalem destructive, yet as the 46th president of the United States, he's not saying anything about this. I want to know what, and he's got a good foreign policy team, so anyway, that's my thoughts I'm sharing with the audience.
Can I just say on a slightly personal note here, Steve? I don't know how many generations away from India you and your family are. I know for me, we're many generations away. I cannot really talk about Indian politics. I don't know. I really know nothing about the country. And I don't know about their politics. I don't know about the culture. And I would say the same thing in the Middle East. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I do a lot of business in Dubai. I've been treated, amazingly well in Abu Dhabi. I've been to Qatar, Kuwait. I've been all over the Middle East. Well, I'd say all over, but I've been to many countries in the Middle East. I think that it's a little bit short-sighted to say that moving a US embassy from one place to another is what's going to determine Middle Eastern relations. There are all sorts of issues affecting that region. And frankly, I don't think that we're going to understand them. I'm not going to stand up for Israel. My family, half my family, are Muslim. So I know what people in my family will say when they talk about Palestine. And you have to feel for the Palestinians and the Palestinian children for what they're going through. But on the same token, Israel and the Jewish people deserve to have a place to call home, and they deserve to live. They deserve to have a place. These issues are complicated, and these issues go back generations and generations and generations. I think it's a very dangerous thing for us in the West to cast judgment or to try to think that we need to influence things too much. The people in that region are the best people to actually talk about the things that are affecting them. And I think that we are too far away to talk about that. And I think that it's very dangerous. I can make comments about US politics because we're allies. I understand America from my perspective. You know, we have similar ideals. We fought in similar wars, etc. But the cultural things, the centuries old fights that go on in the Middle East, it's something I don't think that we understand, and it doesn't make sense to us in a lot of ways. Of course, we want world peace, but maybe our intervention doesn't create that.
Well, maybe it's this. Maybe it's religious, racial, and national indoctrination from all the children since they were born. And that creates these different mindsets on states and nationalities.
Well,
okay,
that's
what I'm
race theory in the United States at the moment, doesn't it?
Pardon? No, we're independent.
Race theory in the United States at the moment.
Come over here. We're independent free thinkers. Look at what Steve did today.
I've been there.
Okay, now you recognize our independent.
Well, I took off my hat. Well, we probably will have to spend more time on this tomorrow when we get our technical issues fixed. But the point I'm trying to make, there's a larger picture here before we go into the Liz Cheney announcement. Let's spend the last 10 minutes on that. The point I'm trying to make, Shaquille Latimer has brought up a good point. I'm actually going to go ahead and get a book. I read a lot. I need to go get a book on Middle Eastern politics because I don't understand it enough, right? But all I'm saying as a commentator of this show, as the host of this show, is that we're not hearing very strong, consistent foreign policy messaging from President Joe Biden. And let's take a break from Israel for a minute. I talked about Iran. We said we were going to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. We haven't. We're talking tough on China. What's really changed, right? We talked about Cuba. What's really doing with Cuba? We're talking about, we got a lot of people coming in the border. We don't see a lot of policy on the Southern Hemisphere. So as we emerge from the pandemic, I hope that President Biden will convene with his advisors because the Democrats typically have to be strong on foreign policy. Now, President Obama was strong on foreign policy. When you look at Obama entered into the Paris Accords, the transatlantic partnership, right? He took out bin Laden, right?
That's not necessarily being strong on foreign policy. It depends on what side of the political aisle you're on.
Right. Anyway,
no, not bin Laden, the other stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sharing ideas. I don't have an answer. But anyway,
it's all about. That's what the show's about: is sharing ideas and getting ideas. And Shaquille's always got good ideas and likes to stir up things. Even though, as he would put it, we have a similar country background since both of our countries, Australia and the United States, were made up in their original guise of folks that were coming from prison backgrounds. Some of them were political prisoners. Some of them were actual criminals that were prisoners, and they moved to the islands of Australia and to the United States. So we have that common bond.
I'm not white, so I'm not actually one of the criminals. I'm one of the non-criminals. Just
we
put that out there.
That.
It was only white people that were criminals.
So anyway,
I was just talking about the history. I was just talking about the history.
I came from the Dutch. I mean, in 1665. I mean, the thing is, we weren't coming in as criminals. We took over New York. It was New Amsterdam, and then the Brits came and they took over us. I mean, that's kind of like how it goes. The real answer is might makes right, mate. That's basically the name of the game. And right now, Israel have the might. Israel makes the right. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Speaking of might makes right.
They have the might in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So we got.
Hold on one second, because I know that Steve wants to get to Liz, and I want to get to Liz as well. But speaking of Mike makes right, I did have this one hilarious story, and I know that you're a dog racer and a lover of animals of all sorts. So I do want to share this one hilarious story because apparently in Chicago, they have started a new program called Cats at Work, because apparently there is a major rodent problem in Chicago. So they have released a whole bunch of feral cats. So I just found that to be just kind of like this kind of typical Chicago solution.
Yeah, might makes right. The cat eats the mouse, and that's how it goes. I mean, that's what's happening.
So we got 5 more minutes left, and we're going to talk about Liz Cheney real quick. So very, very interesting. As I have said earlier, I think that this is an exciting thing for American democracy, because it's showing that the extremism of political parties can be challenged. And so now Liz Cheney is saying she's going to run again. There's been rumors about her running for president, but she's against Trump because he's refused to he's still saying that he was the legitimately elected president. She's citing that he was inspiring the insurrections and that he's violating the Constitution. But the question is, number one, I think it says 2 things. The Republican Party is no longer a party of ideas. It's a party of loyalty, tribal loyalty to Donald Trump.
Come on now.
And this is his party. This is his party. Okay. Look, I had to throw that out there. I'm joking. It is a party of ideas, but it's moved for a litmus test. So you're either loyal to Trump or not. Now the question becomes, what is this going to do for the future of American politics? Are you going to see disruption in more parties emerge? And isn't that a good thing for America, Shaquille Latimer? Isn't it a good thing to have more choice in a democracy? Don't you think we should have a multi-party system? I made him laugh. I lit the fire.
Don't put me by myself. I want to say, Steve, come on screen with me. Come on screen with me. I want to talk to you for a second.
He's taking me to the woodshed.
You remove me.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, look. You could say the Republicans have no ideas. The Republicans say the Democrats have no ideas. All the Democrats want to do is go down the evil path of identity politics. But here's the thing. You've got, 150, 160 million people that voted last election, all right, or 200 million, depending on what stats you're looking at. You had all these people vote, and the majority of people are not all the way left on some issues or all the way right on some issues. They're sitting somewhere around the centre. The people who are on the centre-right that are going to vote for the Republicans can understand the centre-left views of the Democrats. The people that are centre-left that are going to vote for the Democrats can understand some of the centre-right views of the Republicans. But the two parties have stretched themselves out and pushed themselves to extremes. And so what ends up happening is that there are a whole heap of people, generally the majority, who say we should have another party. We should create another party. Unfortunately, that doesn't work very well. We have seen third parties take over, like we saw the Democratic Republicans split, the Whigs disappeared, and Republicans came about. We have seen that sort of stuff happen, but it's rare. And I think that whenever there is any talk and any support of a third party, what it is really telling the political class is that they're out of touch with the everyday person. And that's the real problem. I don't think that the politics in America, on the left or the right, is really catering to what everyday people want. And I think when people try to express what they're concerned about, they're dismissed. They can be dismissed on the left as being a racist or a bigot or this or that, and they're dismissed on the right as being a socialist or a communist and a horrible person who hates the country. And that's a real problem.
And maybe that's a good point. I mean, when I said not ideas, maybe that's true on both sides of the spectrum, that the litmus test has become loyalty to the extremes of each party. And then the Joe Manchins of the world who say, look, sausage is made by bringing ideas of both parties and listening to average everyday Americans. So that's the point, Shaquille. I didn't mean to blast the Republican Party, but we're not hearing a lot from Republicans about low taxes, trickle-down economics. Maybe you are hearing about inflation possibly and government being too big, but it's more or less about you're either loyal. Because, here's the irony. Elise Stefanik has been rated lower on the conservative report card than Liz Cheney on every measure. So Liz Cheney came in at 80%, and Liz Stefanik was at 44% by some of the conservative.
I spent a lot of time when I was there last. I spent most of my time in southern states and voted Republican. And I actually criticized Donald Trump quite heavily while I was there. Okay. I would, if I was back in America now, I'd be in California and I'd be in a lot of the states that vote Democrats, and I'd be criticizing Biden. It's not about in my opinion, whether you agree with the party. It's about trying to look at where are the shortcomings and where are places where people don't get the result that people generally want. Government does a really bad job a lot of the time. It's just that they do a better job than if we didn't have government at all. And I think that we should always be looking to hold government to account. We should always be looking to improve government and make sure that government is providing a service to the people that the people want. It doesn't matter who's in charge. They're going to do a bad job. They might be doing a better bad job than the other side, but they're always going to do a bad job. And it's really important that there's checks and balances, and the people are the greatest check and balance that you can have. That's why I always argue on this show about making sure that individual sovereignty and the freedom of individual people is respected and understood. And you know, when you guys understand the Bill of Rights in America, the Constitution of America, it was specifically founded to make sure that the tyranny of big government was restrained.
No doubt about that. And I know we're going to wind down, Steve. I know we're going to wind down on the abbreviated edition, and I will try to create those links so we don't have this problem anymore and everything. But one of the things I was going to just bring in really quickly and everything is, you know, there's been a big unmasking of people here in the United States, and particularly around North Carolina, but all over and everything. And I was just pulling up an article from The Guardian, you know, over there in London. And apparently a leading scientific advisor over there has warned that Monday's lockdown easing in England may have to be reversed, and also cautioned against meeting indoors. So I guess one of the things that I'd be curious about, and maybe we can talk about this tomorrow, is that something that we're concerned about, that even though people are getting vaccinated and people are unmasking, that we may have to go and put this back in reverse, because they were saying that, you know, that they did the same thing as we did, and now they're having some case spiking and things of that nature. So they're actually saying that maybe we got to reverse this whole process.
Well, that's a great point. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, and we're going to leave. We're right at the hour. We want to wish everyone safety out there, and we apologize for technical difficulties. We'll be back tomorrow for Pod TV, and we're going to talk about foreign policy. Liz Cheney, talk about post-pandemic recovery as we're getting back to a new normal, not wearing masks. But I want to close out my monologue today by wishing happy birthday to a very special North Carolinian, former Governor James B. Hunt, who served as governor of North Carolina, today the 9th largest state in the United States of America, for 16 years. He was governor from 1977 to 1984, and again, governor from 1992 to 2000. For any of you that heard of IBM or Cisco or much of the Research Triangle Park as we know it today, Governor Hunt was the leader, a pioneer whose mentor was Terry Sanford, one of the founding governors of the Research Triangle Park. He was a young, dynamic lieutenant governor, and he did really, really great things for our state. We in the North State, which they call North Carolina, call him our governor, a governor for all times. And I'll end with I usually don't do my imitations, but I remember one day introducing Governor Hunt at an event, and he paused in that Jim Hunt style, and he said, "Steve, I want to thank you for that wonderful introduction. If my wife Carolyn were here, she would have found it interesting. And if my mother were alive, she would have believed it." Thunderous applause, his infectious charisma echoed through the room, and Governor James B. Hunt would continue to live in our hearts. Governor, if you're watching, we love you. Stay healthy and keep fighting, and you will always be our governor. Happy birthday, my friend, and lovely, and also kudos to your lovely wife, Carolyn, the former First Lady. Thank you very much. I know you're a bit surprised with my foray into imitations. Maybe that's something new we can do on the show. Hey, guys. She said, that wasn't bad, Mark Lee, right?
No, not bad at all.
Well, thank you, Mark. Folks, it's been great to be on World Edition, and we thank you so much. And on Pod TV, we'll be back tomorrow for another edition. See you tomorrow morning. Be safe wherever you are, and may the light and love of our hearts always, always lift us out of the darkness. And we pray for India as we speak, as they continue to burn in carbon hell. Thank you so much.